Hi, I'm recording again, and here we are with our smile mat. Oh, I get to make a comment. Let's see. Have you noticed that Thomas is changing? Well, Ralph and Paul did. They noticed that city boy Thomas is becoming kind of comfortable being a country cowboy. And that's kind of from my real life too. Not from me, because I've always enjoyed country, but my husband William, was totally born a city boy. I mean, let's face it, born in downtown Toronto, Canada, and he lived in downtown New York City. In fact, he lived just over there by the Central Park. Well, he did also live in New Jersey, but that's another city. In fact, he lived in New Jersey at the time in 1964 when they had that gridlock shutdown of all the power. He had just gotten home to his apartment in New Jersey and turned on the TV to get back. He loved the evening news, and the whole evening news was coming from Pittsburgh, not from New York. And Pittsburgh was saying there's a blackout in New York, and he went to his apartment window and looked out, and nothing. It was totally black where there should have been all the lights of New York. But yeah, he's lived in some interesting city places along the way. So it was very interesting that, well, I mean, we were living in Anaheim, California, which is totally city. And he noticed that every time we came to Kingman, Arizona to visit my mom, that I could breathe. I could lay down at night and breathe. Well, that sweet, wonderful, caring man of mine suggested that we move to Kingman, Arizona. And we did in January of 1995. So, you know, I loved it. I mean, it's rural and not country, just rural. And so about a year later, I asked him how he was doing. And oh my gosh, I was totally surprised. He was totally, absolutely missing no malls. He can't go walking in the mall. There's no street lights. Yeah, we live out this way. And no curbs and gutters. That really seriously bothered him. He's such a sweetheart. He sacrificed all that because he loves me. Yeah, well, lots of things like that happen in our life. We have to, you know, make adjustments and etc. So, well, that's a happening thing right here in Smile Nile. So let's get back to the story. Thanks for listening to me talk a wee bit there. Okay, let's see what we're doing here. All right, Nita, we are on the bottom of page 122, and we're picking it right up to get on with, let's see, what happened? Oh dear. Yeah, Bruce stopped talking about building, how the ranch got built up, and he turned it over to Thomas and Ella. And Thomas had just mentioned that his dad had come, and they came in on a Friday night, and as soon as he mentioned that, Ella slumped down in her chair and was trying not to cry, and Thomas took a big gulp and decided that he better be moving on too. Thomas coughs, then looking for a way out, short and curtly he says, actually, all I remember are the horses and that there was a lot of people. Guess I better be helping Bruce. That fire needs started. And off goes Thomas to get firewood. Ella wipes away a tear and stands up and says, oh, right, I think Champ needs me. And she heads out with Jack at her side. Paul and Ralph look at each other, shrugging their shoulders, and get their cameras going and stay with their clients. Wouldn't you know, supper time is rather quiet. The sun is going down. The shadows are long, and the little animals scurry about, trying to get their dens and their trees for the night. Birds are calling to each other, as are the crickets, and Jack is lying down at Ella's feet. Bruce is the first to speak up. Rather cautiously, he says, looks like it will be a delightful night. We've had plenty of them up here. He looks at Thomas, and he looks at Ella. They both just nod their heads and just keep eating. Bruce tries again to make conversation. Should be lots of stars for us to see tonight, not a cloud in sight. He again looks at each of the kids and quietly says, well, finish up. We've got something to do. Paul whispers to Ralph to keep filming, then quickly stands up and makes an announcement. Paul happily says, well, supper isn't over until we've had dessert. He goes to his backpack and produces a large paper bag, and handing it to Ella, he says, your Uncle Charles wanted you to have this when we got to High Meadow, and not before. Jack is bouncing all around with excitement, not knowing why, just enjoying the change of attitude. Thomas even grins from ear to ear and says he was always spoiling her with those. Well, he did make sure I got my share. Ella opened the bag and she squealed in delight, some s'mores, we get to have s'mores. So, come on. Let's get to making some more family fun memories here again. Thomas quickly finds thin branches for everyone, some with a fork in so they could cook 2 marshmallows at a time. With Ella, Ella patiently lines up all the goodies on the breadboard that Bruce has brought over from his kitchen supplies. Bruce sets out the lanterns by the goodies. Thomas knocks down the fire to have just the right kind of coals for roasting those marshmallows, and the fun begins. The smell of roasting or burning marshmallows fills the night air. They eat until they are all happily stuffed. Even Jack gets a cooked marshmallow from Ella, 1 or 2. They are happy campers by the end of the evening, or so Ella thought it was the end of the evening. As she starts to excuse herself, Bruce gets one of the lanterns and reverently speaks up. There's one more thing your Uncle Charlie wanted to happen at High Meadow. He sits down, carefully pulls out the envelope from inside his shirt and says, been waiting for the right time. Just didn't know when it was. So guess there's never a right time. May as well get on with this now. Ella looks at the envelope, then looks at Bruce. Thomas just sits, looking at the fire, poking it with his long stick. Ella is stunned. She sits back down in her chair and asks, what is that? Bruce takes a deep breath, sighs a bit, then says, this is the next part of your Uncle Charles' will, to be read to the 2 of you when we get to High Meadow. Ella reluctantly says, oh no, I'm not sure I'm going to like this. You sound very serious. Thomas looks up at Bruce and quietly says, he knew. He just knew the right place to tell us goodbye, didn't he? Bruce nods in agreement. Ella gasps and holds back a few tears. Jack puts his head in Ella's lap. He feels she's in need of comfort. She buries her head in his fur. Paul and Ralph are very quiet and poised with their cameras. Paul whispers, that's why Charlie had us make sure to have on night lenses. They look at each other and nod their heads. They are ready. Thomas quietly says, I figured he wrote something, especially since neither one of us made it here for Thanksgiving or Christmas last year. Ella starts to cry, then catches herself so she doesn't. Thomas calmly continues, I didn't think he would have it read at his memorial service. Ella quickly speaks up as she's remembered saying, I was amazed at how many were at the memorial, over 1,500 people in that high school auditorium in Butte. Bruce quietly says, yes, many hearts were touched over the years by your uncle. Not just our local clients, lots of them were his army buddies. Thomas, looking in the fire, quietly says, and I recognize lots of those folks from around here too. Bruce looks deep into the fire and agreeing says, to be exact, every one from this little valley town was there. All 500 of them, children and all. Thomas looks at Ralph and quietly says, that's where I saw you. Ralph nods his head and quietly, with great respect in his voice, says, "Yes, we've fully recorded the services as per Charlie's request. He wanted it for those who couldn't be there. Even recorded the Irish wake. He wanted everyone to have the full feeling of it." Thomas sighs. It was a totally touching military service with so many testimonials. Ella softly cries. Bruce softly says, "You just go right ahead and cry, little Ella. It's good for the heart." Ella sits up, stops crying, and coughing a bit says, I'm fine. What did he write? What did he want us to know?" Jack puts his back in her lap, and she absentmindedly pets him. Bruce reverently begins the reading. "My dear, sweet Ella, and my special Thomas. Sure did miss you two at Christmas time. I realize you have your own lives. Thanks for your charming gifts. Thomas, those family photos are the most precious to me. Now there's something you need to know. Something I didn't do right all those years of having you around." Ella audibly stifles yet another cry. Bruce merely continues, "I apologize for not allowing you your grieving time after your parents died." Both Thomas and Ella gulp, gasping. Bruce just continues on. "I hope you understand I didn't know how to handle all that grief in my life and didn't want you to suffer as I did. So, well, I used the camera and acting scripts to take you away from sadness. I have sorrowed so much over the years for all the men, buddies that I lost in the wars while I was in the army, and for my young son and my sweet wife too. I know how it feels to have a loved one die and you're not there to say goodbye. Not only then, I lost my younger brother, Eric, in the 1918 epidemic. He was only 3 years old. I didn't want you to go through that kind of sorrow too. You sure were a funny people. We sure are. You know, we want to go to heaven, yet we don't want to die. Funny, because the only way to get to heaven is to die a mortal death. Well, that's what I learned. So I guess it's okay that my parents and little brother are already there. Sure hope and really do believe that I will see them there and be with them again." Ella is devastated. I never knew he had a little brother." She stifles a sob. Thomas gently touches her hand as he says, "Me neither." Jack puts his head in her lap again. Bruce reverently continues, "I want you to learn what I finally learned about grief. Now I understand that grieving is a natural process. We must all pass that way." Let me quote a passage I found. It's a rather old saying from Queen Elizabeth I. I kept it on my desk in the library, right next to my one and only family photo of me and Angela and my little Eric, my son. I have learned photos are good for the heart. Never showed you two that photo. It was taken at Christmas time, just before I left for boot camp. Only learned to appreciate that photo after I learned the meaning of the saying. This quote helped me a lot, and I hope it helps the both of you too. Quote, "Grief never ends, but it changes. It's not a place to stay, but a passageway. Grief is not a sign of weakness, nor lack of faith. Grief is the price of love." End of quote. Please grieve with me over my mistake. I did it out of love. Now it's time to move on down the pathway of grief, loving your parents and remembering them. Ella buries her head in her lap. Jack nuzzles her hand. Thomas is rocking back and forth on the rock, looking up at the starry sky, pondering. Bruce looks up and sees them in their distress, and continues. Dear Ella and Thomas, it's okay to be different, as each of you are. Different, just like your mom and dad were different. They learned to work together, and were not only happy, they loved. They loved each other wholeheartedly. They loved you both very much. So I know very well that they are here in heaven with him. I'm sure they watch over you. Sorry I never let you know this before. I was overprotective. I apologize. Please, forgive me. Bruce stops, looks at both of them, then comfortingly says, there's more that he wants me to read tomorrow night. Right now, your Uncle Charlie wants the two of you to take a walk around High Meadow. Ralph quickly speaks up. Is that safe? You say cougars are in the area. Thomas calmly stands up, takes Ella by the hand and says, Jack will be with us. We'll be fine. Bruce hands Thomas the lantern that he was using to read the lantern and says, go. Cry, Ella, cry. It's okay to miss them. Miss all the times you wish you had been there for you. Cry your heart out and feel loved. Thomas, that goes for you too. You can admit you have missed them too. Grown men can cry, and then this too will pass. Finally. That's what your Uncle Charlie wants for the both of you. To feel love. The love of your parents, and his love for you too. The good Lord is waiting to comfort you. Just open your hearts and feel his love. So much love is waiting to enfold you. Ella begins sobbing as they walk out into the meadow with Jack at her side. Bruce reaches for his rifle and sets it near him, just in case. Then he signals Ralph and Paul to not follow and says, Charlie wants them to have this personal time. What you captured here at the campsite is good enough. Please sit down. I'll fill you in on some of the missing pieces of our startup of the ranch. You know, for that last documentary you're making. Then he reaches over for the .22 rifle, attaches a night scope, lays it across his lap, and he begins his story of building my ranch. And yep, sure enough, we gotta stop now. We're ending on page 127. So that's where we'll pick it up next time. Well, no, actually, we'll pick it up on 128 next time. This is a heartrending part of the story for me too, and probably for a few of you others. And let me tell you, what time is up? Anyway, let me tell you, one of my proofreaders, when she came to this part, when she handed it back to me with her proof, she says, you didn't warn me to have a tissue box handy. She cried a lot because her husband had passed away about a year earlier than that, and she was still grieving terribly for him. Well, grief is natural, and it's okay. And the good Lord's just waiting to comfort you too, any of you who are out there still in need of his comfort. So, well, I'll say bye-bye for now, and we'll see you next time. Love hugs from Grama Jean.